My name is Richard Bennett. I'm 78 years old. For most of my adult life, I believed my marriage wasn't quite what it was supposed to be. Not bad, not broken, just not ideal. If you'd asked me whether my wife and I were happy, I probably would have paused before answering. I might have said, "We're fine," or "We've had better years." And that pause, that hesitation, tells you everything. My wife's name was Eleanor. We were married for 44 years. That's a long time to share a life with someone. Long enough to build something real, long enough to slowly forget how fragile it actually is. We met when we were young, too young to know what marriage really demanded, but confident enough to believe love would figure out the rest. In the early years, everything felt alive. We talked endlessly, about nothing, about everything. We stayed up late, not because we had to, but because we wanted to. We didn't have much money. We didn't have stability, but we had attention for each other. Back then, I never questioned whether something was missing. Life, of course, didn't stay that simple. Careers arrived, children followed, responsibilities multiplied quietly and relentlessly. None of that was bad. It was a good life, a respectable one, but slowly, without either of us noticing, the texture of our marriage changed. Our conversations became shorter, more practical. We talked about schedules, bills, repairs, groceries. At first, I saw that as progress, as proof that we were functioning adults, not reckless young people anymore. But over time, something in me grew restless. I started feeling like something was lacking, even though I couldn't name it clearly. I missed excitement. I missed being surprised. I missed the feeling that someone was curious about my thoughts, not just aware of my existence. And instead of recognizing that as a shared problem, something to explore together, I quietly blamed the marriage itself. I told myself this was what long marriages turned into, that emotional closeness fades, that passion is replaced by routine. I thought dissatisfaction was just part of the deal. Eleanor didn't see it that way. She would suggest small things, nothing dramatic, nothing unreasonable. Let's eat dinner together without the television. Let's take a short trip somewhere, just the two of us. Let's talk tonight. And every time I had a perfectly reasonable response. I'm tired. Not tonight. We can do it another time. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't dismissive. I simply believed those moments weren't essential. I thought stability mattered more than connection. I thought reliability was the same as intimacy. Looking back, I can see how wrong that was. But at the time, I genuinely believed we were fine. What I didn't understand was that Eleanor wasn't asking for novelty. She wasn't asking for excitement. She was asking for presence. And instead of seeing that as love, I saw it as pressure. I thought she was unhappy. I thought she was dissatisfied with what we had. So I did what many people do when they feel that way. I pulled back emotionally, not dramatically, quietly. I became efficient instead of engaged, present instead of involved. We still shared a home, still shared responsibilities, still shared a bed. From the outside, nothing looked wrong, but inside, something subtle was happening. I started keeping a mental list of disappointments. How conversations felt shallow, how days blended together, how the spark I remembered seemed gone, and that list slowly convinced me that our marriage itself was flawed. I didn't ask Eleanor how she felt about it. I assumed I already knew. That assumption was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. Years passed like that. We were polite, kind, considerate. We didn't fight much, which I took as a good sign, but sometimes the absence of conflict doesn't mean peace. It means avoidance. I thought we had time to fix whatever felt off, time to reconnect later, time to rediscover each other when life slowed down. I told myself we'd get back to us someday. That thought, we have time, felt comforting. It was also dangerously wrong, because time doesn't announce when it's about to run out. When Eleanor got sick, the illusion of endless time collapsed instantly. Cancer doesn't wait. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about plans you assumed you'd get around to. Suddenly, there was no later, no we'll work on it someday. There was only now. And in that moment, standing beside her, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Fear, not just of losing her, but of realizing I might have misunderstood our entire marriage. That was my instinct. Find the best doctor, ask the right questions, read the information, follow the plan. It gave me something to hold on to, a sense of control. Eleanor let me do it because she knew it made me feel useful, but there was a quiet shift in her that I didn't notice right away. She became more still, not hopeless, just focused, as if once the noise of everyday life was gone, she could finally hear what mattered. Hospitals are strange places. They're full of people, but they feel lonely. The lights are too bright. Time moves in chunks. Waiting, tests, results, more waiting. And in between all of it, there are these moments when you're alone with someone you've known for decades, and you realize how much you've never said. One afternoon, Eleanor asked me to pull a chair close to the bed. Her voice was tired but calm. She said, "Richard, can I tell you something without you trying to fix it?" That's a sentence that should stop any person in their tracks. I nodded. She said, "I don't want to spend whatever time I have left pretending." I didn't know what she meant, not at first. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and she said, "I loved you. I still love you, but we lost each other for a long time, and we both let it happen." She wasn't angry. That was the frightening part. If she'd yelled, I could have argued. If she'd blamed me, I could have defended myself. But she wasn't accusing me. She was grieving something we'd both lost years before she ever got sick. I sat there, trying to find the right words, and all I could think was, how did I not see this? She continued gently, like she'd rehearsed this in her own mind. She said, "You kept waiting for life to slow down, for the perfect time, and I kept telling myself you were tired or stressed or busy, so I stopped asking for things, not because I didn't want them, but because I didn't want to feel rejected by the person I loved." That sentence hit me like a physical blow, because I suddenly saw my own behavior from the outside. All those "not tonight," all those "maybe later," all those reasonable excuses. I hadn't meant them as rejection, but that's what they were. And then she said something that I still hear in the quiet moments of the day. She said, Udri, I didn't need you to be perfect. I just needed you to be with me. I wish I could tell you I responded brilliantly. I didn't. I just held her hand and stared at the floor like a man who had walked into the truth and didn't know how to live with it. Over the next few weeks, something changed between us, not in a dramatic movie-like way, not a sudden miraculous reconciliation, just honesty. We started talking again, not about bills or schedules or what needed to be done, about us, about who we were when we met, about the years that flew by, about the things we never said because we thought we'd have time later. One night, she asked me what I remembered most from our early years. I told her the truth. I told her I remembered how alive she looked when she talked, how she'd lean forward, eyes bright, as if the world was interesting and she intended to get something out of it. She smiled at that, and for a moment I saw the younger Eleanor in her face. Then she said quietly, I tried to keep that version of me alive. I just got tired doing it alone. That was the moment I felt the full weight of my mistake, not because I didn't love her, but because I let her feel alone inside our marriage. We had more of those conversations about small disappointments, small hopes, small griefs that accumulate over decades and become a wall you don't even notice. And here's the cruelest part. Those conversations were not hard because they were dramatic. They were hard because they were ordinary, because the damage wasn't caused by a single terrible decision. It was caused by 1,000 small ones. The day I chose work over listening. The night I chose television over talking. The weekend I chose rest over a walk with her. None of those moments felt significant at the time, but stacked together, they became a life. Eleanor passed away on a Tuesday morning. I remember that detail because I keep wanting to believe it happened on a different day, as if changing it would change what followed. The hospital called early. I arrived, and she was already gone. There was a calmness to her face that didn't feel fair, as if she'd made peace with something I was still fighting. After the funeral, people did what people do. They told me I'd been a good husband. They told me she knew I loved her. They told me time would help. I thanked them. I nodded. I accepted the words the way you accept condolences. Politely, because you don't know what else to do. Then I went home. And the silence there was different from any silence I'd ever known. Not peaceful, not restful, just absence. In the weeks after, I began going through old photographs, boxes in the closet, albums that hadn't been opened in years. There we were, young, sunburned, laughing, standing in front of a cheap car we were proud of, holding our children when they were small, sitting at a kitchen table we thought we'd replace someday. And I realized something that made my stomach turn. I had spent years thinking our marriage wasn't perfect. And I was right. It wasn't perfect. It was better than perfect. It was real. It was two people building a life with ordinary love, the kind you don't notice until it stops. I had been looking for a feeling, a constant spark, a constant excitement. And while I was searching for that, I ignored what we actually had. A woman who stayed, a woman who tried, a woman who reached for me 100 times before she stopped. That's the lesson I want to leave you with, especially if you're watching this in the middle of a hard season. If your marriage feels imperfect, if it feels quiet, if it feels routine, don't assume that means it's failing. Before you decide it's broken, look again. Ask yourself, when was the last time I chose closeness over convenience? When was the last time I listened without multitasking? When was the last time I did something small, not because it was required, but because it would make them feel seen? Because one day you may find yourself where I am, surrounded by photographs, remembering the sound of their voice, realizing the life you thought was ordinary was the most valuable thing you ever had. I thought we had time. We didn't. If the person you love is still in the next room, go to them. Not tomorrow, not after work, not when things calm down. Now. You don't need grand gestures. You don't need perfection. You just need to choose them while you still can.